about. It's called dwelling coverage,
First
and it
bucket.
pays to rebuild your actual house. And usually the coverage is either replacement value, which is what you want, or cash value. You want replacement value because that covers what it's going to take to rebuild a similar building in today's dollars. And for us, that was kind of a big deal because we were rebuilding the house during COVID. It took us a long time to get to the rebuild process for reasons I won't go into. But during COVID, there were supply chain issues, so the cost of lumber was a lot higher, and so we had to capture that replacement value. But the fact is, we never really fully did, and part of it was because we built a nicer house. But that was fine, we were willing to eat that cost. The second bucket is personal property. So this covers everything inside your home, furniture to clothing to the spices in your kitchen cabinets. And it's very hard to remember everything that's in your home. So if you have any videos of holiday celebrations or anything like that, look through your videos and make sure you're just documenting every single thing in your house in a spreadsheet. If you have valuable items like artwork or antiques, if you have receipts for those things, that's helpful to have. Surprisingly hard to get to the limit. We had a very high coverage for that personal property. I think it was like $200,000, and we never got all that money because we just couldn't even come up with enough things that we owned that would add up to that amount. Pro tip, if your house hasn't burned down, take a video of everything in it, so if it does, you'll have that. But we left quite a bit of money on the table with the personal property bucket. A third bucket, and this is where a lot of negotiation comes in. It's called additional living expenses, or ALE. This is the money that covers your temporary housing, food if you don't have a kitchen in that temporary housing, if you're in a motel for a period of time, even the difference in your commute while you're rebuilding. All this can be covered. And this is the vaguest part of the policy. They don't outline any numbers, so you have no idea what you're entitled to, and that's by design, because they want to keep it as little as possible. For example, in our case, this was a second home, but we were paying the same insurance costs as our neighbors across the street who live there full time. But they got 2 years rent costs, whereas since they knew it was our second home, they said, well, how many nights a year did you really spend in that home? And we came up with a number of 75. So they said, okay, we'll give you 75 nights of rent or hotel coverage. And you're not really thinking clearly because it's traumatic experience. Even being a second home, it was a traumatic experience because it was this family home that we all loved so much. So you're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. But if we were thinking more clearly, it would have been like, wait a minute, the same policy as a full-time residence, we should get that 2 years of rent too. And the reason why you want to get that and maximize it is because you're not going to get enough to replace your building. You might want to build a nicer house, or things are more expensive, and you're just going to fall short in some of these buckets, so you're trying to maximize each one so that you end up okay overall. They gave us a very hard time on the ALE. One year we went down to Southern California for like 4 nights with our family, and we stayed at this hotel. The next year we wanted to go to the same hotel, and they came back and they said, no, you can only go within 50 miles of the old home. A completely new arbitrary rule that did not exist the previous year. When I pointed that out, they caved and they said, okay, you can go there. And they also gave us a really hard time. My mother was officially on the deed of the house. And so when she didn't go with us on these vacations, they said that it shouldn't count, which is ridiculous because it was not always with us in the house. And they actually started harassing her, calling her directly and demanding to know like what she ate when we went to Pismo Beach, and it really stressed her out, and he reported them to the California Insurance Commission for that. And I think that's kind of a big deal because they were very upset that I did that, and they said it cost them a ton of extra work and paperwork. Okay, so the final bucket is called ordinance and upgrades, or law coverage. And what that covers is, so when you rebuild, you have to build to current code. And if your building was an older building, ours was almost 100 years old, there are a lot of extra things you have to do, like put in sprinklers and have specific siding that's more expensive, or roofing. And that bucket of money will cover those upgrades to your building. In our case, we had $100,000 for ordinance and upgrades, but that was negotiable because if all the upgrades, the required upgrades, went over $100,000, they were supposed to cover that. I think we did end up getting like an additional $20,000, $25,000 from that. The reason all of this is so hard is because they don't really write it down in the policies. I remember telling them about the ALE just tell me what we have access to. Tell me how much per day you're willing to give us. And they wouldn't do it. And the reason they wouldn't do it, it goes back to what my lawyer friend was saying. They want to minimize. In fact, they actually use the word abatement with me, which means kind of to claw back benefits they've already given you. And they want to minimize what they have to pay you. And so they don't want to put it in writing because they might be leaving money on the table. So it's up to you to negotiate hard. Some of our neighbors actually hired adjusters because they were having such a hard time with their insurance company, and the adjusters would take a percentage. So that's why people may not be inclined to do that. But some of our neighbors found it very worthwhile because their insurance companies were fighting them so hard, and some companies are better than others. The one that I heard that was absolutely fantastic is USAA. Ours was State Farm, and I was like, meh. In fact, they dropped us after the fire. So I hope all this is helpful. If you have any other questions I might be able to answer, just